Discover the amazing Medici, the bankers who unexpectedly transformed the Renaissance economy. Oliver Bennett had once reveled in the predictable rhythms of his life as an accountant in Maplewood, navigating the numbers with ease, his worth determined by spreadsheets and quarterly reports. But now, a few weeks into unemployment, he felt like a ghost wandering through the echoes of his past. The mill, a rusting skeleton against a gray sky, loomed large over the boarded-up storefronts, the once proud heart of the town, now a reminder of dreams gone stale. With each passing day, Oliver questioned his value, not just as an accountant, but as a man. Could someone stripped of purpose ever be whole again? Rain pattered against the library's windows as he buried himself in old books, seeking refuge. Among the musty shelves, he stumbled upon an ancient ledger adorned with the Medici family emblem. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the yellowed pages, awakening a hunger for ambition he thought had long been extinguished. The stories of wealth and power twisted within him, igniting a spark he had nearly forgotten. As the tales unfolded, his grandfather's voice echoed in his mind, recounting the family business that had faded into oblivion ages ago. Oliver felt the weight of legacy on his shoulders. Could he be the one to breathe life back into it, to reshape Maplewood's destiny? Yet, lurking behind that hope was a gnawing anxiety. How could he reignite a legacy that the very townspeople had buried? His mother's voice warned against embarrassing the family further. She preferred silence to scandal. The fear of failure entwined itself with determination, a tight knot in his stomach. What if he dredged up the past only to be met with disdain? The comforting certainty he once felt at work had morphed into relentless doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Oliver met Miss Hargrove, the retired historian whose declamatory style contrasted with his reserved demeanor. She believed in uncovering truths, but as they uncovered the betrayals that had stripped the Bennett name of its dignity, despair settled in. The revelation that the rival family had orchestrated the downfall of his ancestors crushed him. Did claiming justice mean exposing his family's shame? He fought against the thoughts that twisted mercilessly in his mind, a whirlpool of anger and vulnerability. The upcoming town hall meeting felt like a noose tightening around him. As Oliver stood before the townsfolk, their frowns and whispers weighed heavily on his heart.
Spoke of honor, of reclaiming a legacy, voice trembling through the conflict raging in his chest. Would they see his family as heroes, or would they cast him back into the shadows from which he climbed? As the room crackled with tension, Oliver felt the moment sliding away. A breath caught in his throat, anxiety fueling his fire. Will he continue to fight for truth, to unravel the fabric of lies, or bow to the seductive pressure of uncertainty and fear? In that charged silence, he searched for clarity amidst chaos, wondering if wealth lay in legacies or in the battles he chose to confront. The townspeople's eyes burned into him, waiting for an answer that felt like a type of freedom, but the knots in his heart remained painfully undone. Oliver stood at the edge of the town hall's worn wooden stage, heart racing as he scanned the crowd. Faces etched with skepticism and curiosity stared back at him, creating an invisible barrier he sensed he had to breach. The weight of their collective judgment pressed down, yet he felt an ember of determination stir within him. He couldn't back down now. This wasn't just about his family's legacy, it was an awakening of his own identity. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," he began, forcing calm into his voice. "Today, I want to talk about what Bennett means, not just as a name, but as a promise, a legacy that deserves to breathe again. The words flowed, tentative at first, but gaining strength as he spoke of history, responsibility, and hope. He shared tales gleaned from the Medici ledger, weaving a narrative of resilience and ambition that transcended generations. Yet beneath the bravado, fear thrummed steadily. What if revealing the truth only cast his family deeper into disdain? Fragments of self-doubt flickered through his mind, and for a fleeting moment he faltered, envisioning himself back in the accounting office crunching numbers away from the world, a life stripped of meaning. But the town's silence, ripe with anticipation, demanded more. Letting that fear consume him would mean accepting defeat before the battle began. He took a deep breath, recalling Miss Hargrove's insistence that stories hold power. The Medici once faced their downfall, but resurrected their legacy by investing in art, culture, and community. The metaphor resonated, echoing with his intention. Maplewood needed rejuvenation, a new purpose to rise from ashes. Oliver's nervous energy transformed into fervor as he spoke of rejuvenating the town through initiatives that blended history with progress. He painted visions of a revitalized Maplewood, art galleries, workshops, a future splendidly intertwined with its rich past. Imagine transforming the old mill into a hub of creativity, a space for artists and entrepreneurs, he urged, his voice rising with conviction. Together, we could forge a new chapter, making our name synonymous with innovation. As he concluded, uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Would his vision be embraced, or would it vanish before it took flight? He stepped down from the stage, heart still racing, and faced the expectant crowd. The air buzzed with whispers, skepticism colliding with intrigue. An older man from the audience approached, brow furrowed. "You see history in this, boy, but it's a heavy burden. What do you think happens when they throw the rocks back at you?" His question sliced through Oliver like ice. "I'll take the risk," he replied, challenging the man's skepticism head on. "I believed in the weight of legacy, but I also believe in reinvention. If we let fear guide us, what becomes of Maplewood? Nothing but a forgotten remnant of our past." The man raised an eyebrow, deliberation playing across his features. "Conviction's a worthy companion," he acknowledged, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. Recognition flickered in Oliver's heart. The man didn't just see a claim on the past, but recognized a potential partnership in the future. And just like that, a shift began. A dialogue sparked between Oliver and the audience, ideas flowing, doubts deconstructing. With every exchange, he grasped pieces of strength he hadn't known existed. As the meeting concluded and people slipped away, Oliver was left with a renewed perspective. But alongside the budding sense of accomplishment, a chilling realization dawned. The more he stepped into the light, the more he would draw adversaries from hidden corners of the town's history. Would his courage be enough to face foes he hadn't yet anticipated? With that uneasy thought solidifying, he resolved to prepare. There was no turning back. The path ahead required clearer strategies, allies, and perhaps a deeper dive into the legacy he sought to reclaim. Would he dare to confront not just his family's past, but the dark whispers of the present? And just as he turned to leave, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. A stranger, yet one tethered to his past. Oliver's heart dropped. This was someone from his family's history, and he could sense impending revelations that could alter everything he fought for. Oliver's breath hitched as he recognized the figure pushing through the dispersing crowd. It was Daniel Elliott, a name murmured in the dusty corners of Maplewood history, known for his revelations about the Bennett family's past. The gossip hinted at scandal, amid rumors of lost fortunes and unresolved grievances. Uncertainty gnawed at Oliver. Could Daniel be an ally in rekindling the family name, or was he merely a specter from the past, intent on dragging Oliver back into buried secrets?
Oliver Bennett, Daniel started, his voice crisp as he closed the distance between them. I've been looking for you. We need to talk. The steeliness in Daniel's tone cut deeper than any scrutiny from the audience earlier that day. What do you want? Oliver countered, a mix of defiance and curiosity fueling his voice. He'd spent years disassociating himself from the whispers surrounding his family. Now, confronting one of their bearers only pricked the edges of that hidden fear of being dragged into an old narrative he thought washed away. Your speech was admirable, but there are truths that lie beneath what you shared, truths that could empower you or destroy you. There was a weight to Daniel's words, a hint of urgency that sparked both Oliver's intrigue and anxieties. If you're serious about reviving the Bennett legacy, you cannot ignore the darker elements of our history. I can help you uncover them. Oliver hesitated, weighing his options. This was not the path he envisioned when he spoke about art and creativity. Yet, deep down, he knew every legacy was laced with shadows. Perhaps now was his chance to not only reclaim the family name, but to redefine it by confronting its troubling past. Fine, I'll hear you out, he said, reluctantly choosing to tread into a conversation that felt like stepping on a tightrope suspended over an abyss. But I want full disclosures, no hiding behind half-truths. Meet me tomorrow at the old library, Daniel instructed, a sharp glint of satisfaction in his eyes. It's time you learned what really happened with the Bennett estate, and why it matters today. That evening, as Oliver sat in his room, the daylight dwindling into shadows, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the cusp of a revelation, one that could grant him deeper insight into both his family's heritage and his own resolve. The idea of confronting the past sent a chill through him, yet a flicker of determination surged. Could unearthing hidden chapters of his family's tale replace the fear with fortitude? The night stretched on, engulfing him in contemplation. What could he uncover tomorrow? How might that knowledge shape his vision for the future? Was this the necessary catalyst that would help him reclaim his identity? The perils and promises of the Bennett name woven into his very being. As sleep eluded him, the lingering question remained. Would knowledge be a burden he'd carry, or a liberating force that would drive him to redefine himself and his town? The sun would rise on the next day, and with it, the weight of history pressed urgently against his heart. Determined to face his fears, he finally drifted off, only to be haunted by dreams of secrets unraveled and confrontations that awaited him, and anticipation that unfurled like smoke teasing at the edges of a flame. Tomorrow he would step into the library, not just to learn about his family's past, but to confront the narratives that had long sought to define him. Yet a nagging thought whispered in the back of his mind. What lay beyond those doors? Would unearthing history finally provide him the clarity he sought, or would it plunge him deeper into a struggle he could barely fathom? The morning dawned with a veil of fog sweeping over Maplewood, the town still nestled in slumber, but Oliver felt wide awake. As he prepared for the meeting, his heart pounded rhythmically, part anticipation, part apprehension. With each movement, he questioned the resolve that had driven him to agree to this meeting. Why seek out the truths of the past when the present had its own demands? Yet the urge to understand was overpowering. He arrived at the old library, its battered exterior evoking stories long tucked away. The structure stood as a monument to forgotten tales, much like his own family history. Entering, the comforting scent of aged paper and dust hit him, an olfactory reminder that some truths were waiting to be uncovered. He found Daniel already present, flipping through a yellowed manuscript. "You're on time," Daniel remarked, almost approvingly, without glancing up. "Let's just get to it," Oliver replied, a sharp edge to his voice. He couldn't afford to indulge small talk. There was too much at stake. Daniel paused, then placed the manuscript aside. The Bennett family has been intertwined with both fortune and misfortune for generations. This, he gestured to the manuscript, contains accounts of the original estate and its downfall after the Great Fire, a series of decisions made out of desperation that eventually led to its collapse. With each word, a knot formed tighter in Oliver's stomach. The crushing weight of the family's past began to unearth itself around him like an ominous tide. "What decisions?" he pressed, leaning closer, the gravity of the moment demanding clarity. "Your ancestors were involved in some questionable dealings, trying to save the estate at all costs. There were betrayals, accusations, and ultimately shame." Daniel's eyes held a darkness that felt familiar to Oliver, but it was also brimming with potential. The past was not just a trudge through accumulated regret. There was something vital here, a pathway to understanding who he could become. "What do you want from me?" Oliver's voice quivered slightly. "If this impacts my future, I need to know every detail, no matter how painful it is." "Understand this, Oliver. This knowledge could empower you to reclaim the narrative of your family, or it could shatter whatever semblance of peace you have," Daniel replied, his tone more serious now. "You have to decide. Are you prepared to own these truths? Are you willing to confront the consequences?" It felt almost ceremonial, the enormity of the revelation hanging heavily between them. Oliver's mind raced through the implications of embracing this unraveling history. Would he emerge from this journey a hardened man, burdened by his past? Or could he turn these threads of familial legacy into a tapestry of redemption and strength? As the conversation deepened, Daniel began sharing stories that intertwined the Bennett family's legacy with personal tales of betrayal and ambition. Each story struck a chord, revealing not only the failings of his forebears, but also the potential for his own growth. Oliver realized that every fear, every hesitation he felt was a flicker of a strength still waiting to be ignited. Yet one thought spiraled through his mind like an unrelenting echo. Every truth he unearthed came with its own weight. Could he truly navigate the labyrinth of this family history without losing himself in its shadows? "Tomorrow," Oliver said, deciding the path he would take, "I'll come back with clearer intentions and deeper questions. If I'm going to reclaim the Bennett legacy, I need to do more than simply analyze. It must be transformative." As he stepped outside, the fog had lifted, but Oliver realized, much like the town around him, clarity is often accompanied by a stark reality. With resolve budding within him, he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited him. His journey into the past had only just begun, and he was about to unearth more than he ever expected. But as he walked away, the whisper of doubt crept in once more. Could he withstand the revelations to come, or would he succumb to the shadows, shadows that had always loomed over the legacy he sought to reclaim? Oliver's determination stirred uneasily within him as he returned home, the remnants of the day lingering like the scent of old books. Each step he took echoed with the weight of his family's tumultuous past, shadows casting doubts on his aspirations. He had resolved to face the truths that awaited him, yet with every thought, whispers of self-doubt resurfaced. Was he truly ready to confront the chaos that had defined his lineage? His mind thrashed with questions as he processed the conversations with Daniel. What exactly did reclaiming his family's name entail? Could one man's decision to seek knowledge transform generations of shame into something redemptive? The notion both exhilarated and terrified him. He entered his modest workspace, cluttered with paperwork and remnants of unfinished projects. His current life contrasted sharply against the chaos of his ancestors. Sitting at his desk, Oliver tried to channel his thoughts into a plan, but found his mind fraught with uncertainty. Digging into the familial records felt necessary, so he gathered scraps of information that would guide his inquiry. Each frayed piece revealed connections and choices made long before his existence. What caught his interest most were the decisions that led to downfalls, the betrayals laced within desperate attempts to salvage stability. With a notebook open and a pen in hand, Oliver began to outline the patterns that defined the Bennett family's misadventures. Suddenly, he was gripped by a startling realization. These decisions weren't just remnants of a dusty past, they had implications for the present. What if the miscalculations of ancestors were eclipsing his potential? He questioned whether he had unwittingly adopted their tendencies, the same reckless ambition leading to undoing. No longer could he avoid the discomfort of introspection. He needed to confront these inherited flaws. That night, Oliver penned a list of traits he recognized in himself, flaws that he faced daily. Impulsivity, perfectionism, a fear of shame. These mirrored qualities of his forebears began to surface more vividly. What if overcoming them was critical in forging a new path? Morning light broke through his window with renewed energy. His resolve ignited a fresh understanding. To confront the past, he needed not only the stories told in the manuscripts, but also the courage to rewrite the narrative. He couldn't change what was done, but he could be the catalyst for his family's legacy, a transformation beginning with personal accountability. Determined to further his exploration, he revisited the library. Each detail felt vital now. He was creating a connection to this history he had only passively accepted until today. This time, he arrived prepared, not merely to listen to Daniel, but to engage. Today, I want to delve deeper into the core motivations of those choices, he announced to Daniel, who looked mildly surprised. Very well, Daniel replied, his intrigue piqued. You're beginning to understand that it's not just about uncovering the past, but recognizing how it aligns with your present ambitions. As they sifted through pages rich with narratives of struggle and resilience, Oliver felt a shift. There was power in understanding, not just the past, but how it informed his growth. He found himself asking more profound questions, tackling moral dilemmas faced by his ancestors. The deeper they went, the more he saw a mirrored reflection of himself, a man caught between ambition and conscience. These betrayals and decisions, they represent a fundamental question of character. What does it take to remain unyielding against temptation? Daniel nodded thoughtfully. That's the crux, isn't it? Your ability to rise above the chaos will define what you create moving forward. The weight of the last word lingered, feeding Oliver's determination. Each chapter the two uncovered led him to a new realization, an epiphany about the balance of ambition and ethics. As Oliver left the library, fresh knowledge coursed through him, a promise of transformation flickering like a candle in the dark. He understood the shadows within, but also the light he could generate by discerning the past and crafting his own narrative in the light of its lessons. However, anticipation bubbled inside him, for he knew that the deeper he delved into his family's legacy, the more intense the confrontation would become. Would he handle not just the truth, but the consequences of his newfound understanding? The moment of confrontation was drawing near. The history intertwined with his fate awaited him. Oliver's determination shimmered with new clarity the next morning, an electrifying sense of purpose propelling him forward. He awoke early, the anticipation of confronting his family's legacy igniting a fire he hadn't felt before. Now was the moment to dig deeper, to unearth the complex human emotions that had led his ancestors to great heights and devastating lows. He reviewed his notes meticulously, each scratch and ink stain affirming a painful link to his forebears. They weren't mere historical figures, they were flesh and blood relatives whose choices had shaped the contours of his life. He felt an almost magnetic pull toward understanding not just their failures, but also the very humanity behind their decisions. What were their hopes, their fears, their failures? As he met with Daniel, Oliver's heart raced with excitement, but tinged with anxiety. "I want to focus on the human element," he announced with a newfound vigor, a hint of challenge in his voice. "The emotions behind their choices." Daniel's eyebrows raised, impressed. Ah, so you're transitioning from mere fact-finding to understanding motivations. That's crucial, Oliver. Let's map their emotional landscapes and how those feelings might have influenced their decisions. As they sifted through the historical records, Oliver found himself engrossed in the stories of desire, love, betrayal, and regret. A particular account resonated deeply. A great-great-uncle who had risked everything for a business venture, ultimately leading to his disgrace. Oliver's breath hitched. Was this not a direct reflection of his own ambitions? What was he hoping to accomplish? Oliver voiced the question aloud, his mind racing. Was it worth it in the end? Daniel considered this, his gaze thoughtful. Greatness often comes with sacrifices. The questions you're posing reveal your yearning for something different. But are you willing to confront what it truly means to succeed in a world so rife with temptation? As they explored further, parallels emerged between Oliver and those who had come before him. He recognized his penchant for impulsivity, a trait that often masked itself as ambition. After hours of discussion, he realized that understanding his ancestors wasn't solely about judgment. It was about learning what not to replicate. He felt the heavy weight of his family's legacy transform into a source of wisdom, guiding his next steps rather than holding him down. Leaving the library, Oliver's heart beat with purpose. He felt oddly liberated from a past burdened with shame. He grasped a crucial lesson: the cycle of regret could disrupt no more. At home, however, as the sun dipped below the horizon, doubt crept back in. Should he reach out to those who had wronged him in the present? Would confronting them usher in the chaos he so desperately wanted to avoid? The tension clawed at him, the echoes of generations reverberating within, reminding him that true reconciliation required facing those very demons he sought to transcend. Then an idea sparked within him. Maybe not every confrontation needed to end in discord. Perhaps discussions could lead to revelations, ones that altered his course. As he paced his small workspace, the combination of hope and trepidation ignited his determination once more. He reached for his notebook and scribbled down names, outlining potential dialogues that might mend the rift within his own life while echoing the wisdom of his ancestors. Yet the unfinished task loomed larger than he anticipated. Those dialogues could tear open old wounds, revealing truths better left buried. What if their responses were ones of resentment or dismissal? Oliver paused as uncertainty gnawed at his resolve, yet the fire within him pulsed more intensely. "It's now or never," he whispered to himself, shaking off the fog of doubt. "If I don't confront these relationships, I remain tethered to their failures." Smoothing his face, he made one final decision. He would open the lines of communication, but as a different man. Drawing from lessons of the past, he would approach future challenges with purpose and understanding, determined not to repeat history. With a final look at the notes surrounding him, Oliver recognized that stepping into this new phase would require courage far beyond mere knowledge. The moment had arrived for him to engage with the present as he began to dismantle the lingering shadows of his family's legacy. But just as resolve settled in, a message notification blinked on his phone, an invitation to confront the very family dynamics he had been avoiding. Would he seize this opportunity or draw back into the safety of his indecision? The choice awaited him, stark and undeniable, reflecting the urgency of his transformation. Oliver stared at the message flashing on his phone. The words blurred slightly in his imagination as he wrestled with the weight of their implications. His heart raced not merely from the content of the invitation, but from the realization that this might be the pivotal moment he had been subconsciously seeking. The prospect of revisiting the tangled emotions with his family both terrified and exhilarated him. He settled onto his worn leather chair, feeling the familiar dent of early morning shadows envelop him like an old blanket, comfortable yet suffocating. The names scribbled in his notebook pirouetted through his mind, each one a gateway to a possibility that might lead to catharsis or catastrophe. It felt dizzying, Hence, he sought to ground himself with a plan. The day had barely started, and Oliver knew instinctively that he needed to prepare. He flipped open his notebook to a blank page, determination flaring anew. List after list poured out, a breakdown of past grievances, the tangled emotions of love and resentment, along with potential approaches to each conversation. This wasn't just a strategy, it was a manifesto for his transformation. Adopting the lens of his ancestors who had navigated similar waterways of emotion, he recognized the significance of intention. These encounters could not mean judging or condemning, but understanding and perhaps reshaping the foundation upon which he and his family stood. Each name on the list bore weight, echoing his historical investigations but resonating with a personal urgency that grounded him. Equipped with newfound clarity, he set out for a jog. As the chill morning air filled his lungs, every repetitive footfall resonated with resolve. He visualized each of the impending conversations, replaying potential scenarios in his mind. What if his father met his truth with anger? Would his cousin dismiss him? These imaginary dialogues made his stomach twist, but instead of retreating into dread, he leaned into the discomfort. Each breath drawn was a small affirmation. He would confront the past, and he would do so with intention. Returning home, Oliver stood before the mirror. He scrutinized himself, searching for an unshakable sense of self amidst his apprehensions. "You're not here to repeat history," he told his reflection. "You're here to redefine it." This declaration gave him an energy he'd never expected to summon. It was an invocation, a challenge to rise above the footnotes of disappointment that had long haunted his lineage. As he began drafting individualized messages, he felt the tension ebbing away. Each letter embodied not just invitations, but a heartfelt request for reconciliation, for conversations that were long overdue. The act of reaching out transformed the static weight of his legacy. An opportunity for reparation that hadn't occurred because of obstinance on both sides. By the time he hit send on the last message, there was a stillness in the air, a precursor to the turbulence he knew would follow. Excitement thrummed through his veins, tempered by the knowledge that some responses might not be what he hoped for. But Oliver understood that even rebuff could tell him something valuable, something that would continue shaping his path forward. He closed his laptop and sighed deeply, reflection settling in. He had taken a significant step. Grounded by resilience and grappling with anticipation, he now awaited the outcomes of his choices with a unique blend of confidence and trepidation. The sun was setting through his window, painting the room in brilliant hues of amber and gold. He watched the light shift, thinking ahead to looming conversations set to unfold soon, unaware of how sharply they might change the canvas of his life. Unbeknownst to him, the discussions that lay ahead would test the very foundation of his character, unveiling facets of himself he had yet to explore. Then a sudden vibration tore him from thought. A reply had arrived. As he glanced at the screen, his heart raced anew. He leaned closer, the possibility swirling between dread and hope. What awaited him on the other side? Oliver braced himself for a response he could never have fully prepared for, as it held the potential to redefine everything he thought he understood about family and legacy. Would he find acceptance or disdain? The moment hung in the balance, and with it, the true test of his evolution awaited. Oliver sat on the edge of his bed, the screen of his phone illuminating his face in the dim light of the early evening. The response was brief but charged. "Let's talk. Thursday, 6 p.m. A flurry of emotions engulfed him, anxiety, anticipation, even a hint of exhilaration. But as the initial rush faded, doubts encroached on the fringes of this newfound resolve. What could they possibly discuss after so many years of silence? His first impulse was to respond with eagerness, to flood the conversation with his hopes and intentions. But he paused, remembering his purpose. This wasn't about him alone, but about bridging the gap that had long divided their family. The weight of his lineage pressed upon him, a stark reminder that reconciliation would require not only careful planning, but also vulnerability. With a deep breath, he swung his legs onto the floor, the cool wood grounding him. He imagined the conversation set to unfold, his father's guarded expressions, his cousin's youthful indifference, perhaps now replaced by maturity. Each face brought back a wave of memories, some cherished, and others that induced a tight knot in his stomach. He needed a strategy that melded honesty with compassion, a more nuanced approach that honored both his feelings and theirs. Taking his notebook once more, he began to outline possible dialogue paths. Names were now accompanied by questions he hoped to ask.
Pose. What had they felt during the years of silence? What fears had shaped their responses to him? With every question, he sought to turn the confrontation inward, understanding that he was not merely a participant in an emotional exchange, but often its architect. Hours passed swiftly, the quiet of night settling in. Oliver found himself consumed by the act of preparation, lost in the potentialities of his words. Each pitch and inflection rehearsed in his mind, shaping a deliberate narrative of integrity rather than blame. This wasn't simply about addressing grievances. It was about structuring a dialogue that might unfurl understanding amidst the noise of past hurt. Though nervousness clung to him, Oliver took solace in the notion of empowerment. He was no longer just a scion of a fractured history, but a participant in reshaping it. He recalled the lessons of his research, how historical figures faced trials to emerge transformed. He reminded himself this was a process, a journey where every step mattered. He was on the cusp of revealing both himself and the family he had yearned to connect with. Deciding the best way forward was to write down his feelings, Oliver poured his heart onto the page. Statements of vulnerability intertwined with affirmations of his commitment to healing. Instead of seeking to point fingers, he endeavored to wear his heart upon his sleeve, acknowledging mistakes while simultaneously embracing the chance for forgiveness. As he prepared for bed, a sense of calm washed over him, substituting the earlier dread. This wasn't merely a reunion, it was an opportunity, a crucible in which both he and his family could ignite change within themselves. The horizon loomed ahead, fraught with uncertainty yet electrified by promise. Lying in bed, he felt a burgeoning sense of purpose. He understood that Thursday would not be an end, but rather a beginning, a catalyst for greater transformation beyond that single conversation. Still, the weight of unanswered questions lingered, pressing heavily as he closed his eyes, drifting off to sleep. What truths would emerge from their dialogue? With reconciliation on the table, would they be willing to confront their past, or would they falter once again into silence? The night passed while those answers teetered just beyond reach, leaving Oliver to wonder whether the journey toward healing truly lay in collective confrontation, or if his quest would lead him deeper into the shadows of his family's legacy. As Thursday approached, the anticipation weighed heavily on Oliver. Each day felt elongated, a suspended moment met with an undercurrent of urgency. He dissected every facet of the impending conversation, visualizing myriad scenarios while grappling with the sting of uncertainty. What if his father was unyielding? What if his cousin remained indifferent? Those thoughts spiraled, pushing him deeper into the labyrinth of potential outcomes. On the morning of the meeting, Oliver decided to cultivate a sense of stability. He strutted into the office, his demeanor radiating confidence, even as apprehension bubbled beneath the surface. He dove into work tasks that required his attention. Drafting proposals was rote, yet it grounded him, providing a semblance of normalcy. He embraced the rhythm of problem solving, finding clarity in professional interactions where the stakes were calculable. "Oliver, you are on fire today," his colleague Mark remarked, a grin plastered across his face. "Just trying to stay focused," Oliver replied, allowing a brief smile to escape. Yet beneath that facade, his mind flitted back to his family.
their silences, the palpable walls crafted from years of unspoken resentment and hurt. It was a construct he hoped to dismantle that evening. As he drank his third cup of coffee, he considered the impact of the dialogue. It was far less about him asserting his perspective than it was about drawing out the hidden narratives of others. Going through his notes one last time during lunch, he found a remarkable clarity in what he wanted to achieve. Listening. He reminded himself of the power embedded in that simple action. If history had taught him anything, it was that change seldom occurred in solitary declarations. It thrived in shared vulnerability. He jotted a fresh note. Allow space for their stories. It was a mantra he would carry into the conversation. As twilight cast long shadows over the office, Oliver's heart raced. He left the building with a renewed sense of determination. The walk to the venue felt like a metaphorical journey, each step echoing thoughts of family legacies, heartaches, and hopes for renewal. Arriving early, he found a quiet corner, tapping a pen against his notebook as he observed the bustling cafe. People animatedly conversed, laughter weaving through the air. A stark contrast to the isolation he often felt surrounding his family. He was determined to pivot the outcome toward warmth and connection, embodying the very essence of reconciliation, understanding, compassion, and a mutual willingness to forge a new narrative together. He glanced at the clock, the impending moment now a physical presence pressing against him. Oliver's pulse quickened. What if his careful planning didn't translate into reality? What if he lacked the right words when the time came? Doubts threatened to resurface, but Oliver pivoted, redirecting that energy into focus. It was time to embrace uncertainty, to take ownership of his journey. As he shifted his weight in the chair, a thought struck him. This moment was not merely about creating dialogue. It was about him reclaiming agency over his narrative, mingling with those of his families. Would they open up or close ranks again? The uncertainty danced in his mind, leaving him with a knot of anticipation. The door swung open, and in walked his father, flanked by his cousin, burdened with the weight of years unspoken. The strands of his family tapestry appeared frayed, yet vibrant in their potential. As they made eye contact, Oliver knew the battlefield was set. They would either venture forth into the unknown together, or retreat once more into silence. What uncharted territory would they navigate in this encounter? Would they disarm each other and step into the light, or would old grievances ensure they remained ensnared in past shadows? The conversations that followed felt like a delicate dance of emotions, tentatively stepping around the raw edges of past grievances. Oliver's father appeared stoic, eyes hard, while his cousin fidgeted, the weight of the years pressing heavily on all three of them. The ambient noise of the cafe faded into a muted background, the air too thick with anticipation to bear any respite. "Thank you for coming," Oliver began, his voice striving for steadiness. "I know these conversations haven't been easy." The words hung in the air, a sincere testament to the unresolved pain they had all navigated. His father shifted, visibly strained at the mention of those unspoken years. "You think this is easy for me? We've had more silence than words." There was no malice in his tone, but rather an aching truth surfacing that both Oliver and his cousin desperately needed to acknowledge. "Exactly," Oliver leaned forward, emboldened. "That silence has served no one. We need to break that cycle." As he spoke, a flicker of understanding dawned in their eyes, marking a crucial turning point. The air around them crackled with potential, a palpable energy that dared to redefine the very foundation of their familial bonds. "I don't even know what you want from us anymore," his cousin interjected, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "You've spent all this time living in your head, planning for moments that never came. What now?" The unmasked challenge reverberated, pushing Oliver to confront not just his family's past, but his own precarious navigation of grief and hope. "I want us to rebuild, to redefine what it means to be a Bennett," he said, his voice tracing the contours of sincerity and vulnerability. "What I've learned through delving into our history is that we can rise above the chaos. We owe it to ourselves to seek closure and find a path forward together. Silence settled again, inviting them to grapple with their own resistance. Oliver sensed the shifting dynamics, each of them wrestling with inner reflections of shared pain. I'm not asking for forgiveness or blame games. I just want honesty. If we can address the wounds together, maybe we can finally heal. For the first time, a hint of yearning flickered in his father's gaze. This isn't easy for me, you know. I've held on to my pride and shame for too long, thinking it would protect you, protect us. But perhaps I've been guarding a very broken past. Oliver nodded, feeling the tight knot of fear uncoil within him. What personal history can we use to transform our lives and aspirations into something profound? Perhaps it starts here, with our willingness to breathe life into these heavy conversations. As Oliver continued, a subtle change enveloped the table. Vulnerability replaced accusations. Past grievances transformed into shared narratives. They began to recount their stories and vulnerabilities, inching closer toward the heart of their familial legacy. Regret mingling with love, loss finding resolution in the promise of collaboration. In the end, the conversation morphed into an affirmation of their shared humanity, where the fractures of their past did not solely weigh them down, but identified a rich canvas from which to paint their future. They spoke of mutual support, the burdens lightening as they exchanged life lessons that mirrored their ancestors' struggles. By the time they concluded their dialogue, it felt like a significant shift had solidified, a pact forged in both grief and resilience. As they stood to leave, Oliver felt a wave of catharsis wash over him. This was no longer just a discussion between a father, son, and cousin who once stood miles apart. It was a moment of authentic connection that threaded their lives together anew. Emerging from the cafe, Oliver felt lighter, the air fresh against his face. This confrontation had not merely marked the reclamation of a family legacy, it had redefined his identity. He walked with purpose, feeling an unwavering confidence settled deep within. He had faced the shadows of his lineage and emerged not just intact, but renewed, a man ready to steer his narrative with conviction. He smiled as he thought of Maplewood. The visions of art galleries and workshops flooding the old mill danced in his mind, dreams now within reach. He knew now he was the architect of his destiny, equipped with the lessons learned from both his past and newfound connections. He had practiced courage, navigated vulnerability, and emerged profoundly changed, possessing the strength to forge a legacy not rooted merely in history, but in transformation. In the heart of Maplewood, Oliver Bennett became a symbol of reclamation, and with a deep breath of renewal, he knew he was ready to build a future reflective of a reconciled past. This is your moment, audience. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional journey we unveil. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm that brings you these incredible stories. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative conclusion. Your insights are invaluable. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring story. True fans of personal growth will understand the importance of your support.